I saw the world in greater dimensions. Um, Visually got to see the spectrum. And it sounds like I'm crazy when I say that. I left the third dimension.
Shut up and sit down.
I don't know where to start, so I'm making this video to try to explain what I saw and what happened, and it's very difficult to explain. So probably going to end up doing some edits to this. I saw the world in greater dimensions. Visually got to see the spectrum. And it sounds like I'm crazy when I say that. I left the third dimension. And yeah, sounds crazy when you say it. Sounds like a hallucination, which for all intents and purposes, it is an hallucination. Well, in all honesty, reality is an hallucination. So like anybody who's ever seen those optical illusions, and there's tons of them, like you see that little gray square, it's got something like a solid object next to it casting a shadow over it, and that looks like a darker gray square than the other gray squares. But then when you move the object, it turns out that that color was actually the same color gray as the other ones. It was just the optical illusion. Basically, our minds are telling us what to see in reality. So everything is an hallucination. Okay. We just happen to agree on the hallucination, the solid stuff, the matter. We agree on what we're seeing. So, oh yeah, it's really there. But after last night, I'm not so sure. The three-dimensional world makes sense, okay? Side to side, front to back, up and down. That's all you need. It makes sense. So with that being said, it's so hard to explain. How did I see it? I have a theory that psychedelics are not mind-altering drugs. Psychedelics are mind-opening drugs. So I believe that what psychedelics are, and first of all, let me just preface this. I do not condone any use of illegal alcohol or drugs or any kind of illegal narcotics. I do not condone it. I'm not giving you advice to go get high, okay, and go try to do it. But I'm saying that I have a theory. For educational purposes, I have a theory that what psychedelics are actually doing are showing you actual reality. And the reason why I believed that is because I could not shake this feeling that my eyes were trying to focus on something. Even talking about it right now, my heart's like pounding because I tried it multiple times. At first, it wasn't easy, but I ended up doing it, and it works. And boy, does it work! But it was very reminiscent of those magic eye posters. In middle school, we used to play around with those, and I thought they were the most interesting thing. They were really cool. It was kind of like psychedelic geometric shapes and all these different colors. And if you stare long enough at it, it's like your eyes are trying to show you something that's there. So you end up seeing this 3D image pop out, right? Well, or go back, depending on your perspective. It could be popping out, or it could be encaving in. But either way, there's depth to it. So you see this 3D. I couldn't shake that feeling on psychedelics. I couldn't shake that feeling that my eyes were trying to focus on something. It was very reminiscent of that, right? So what ended up happening was I had this realization that the walls weren't actually moving. The floor was not actually moving. The ceiling was not actually moving. Everything in front of me was not actually pulsating. It was my mind trying to focus on something. So if I could relax my mind, then it would tell me what I'm trying to see. And sure enough, what happened was I looked at the big picture and I allowed my eyes to relax, and I envisioned something, and instead of being far in front of me, like there was something in the air. And now all of a sudden what I was seeing moving, what I thought was quote unquote moving on the walls, ended up coming into perspective. What? How does that make sense? It's like, how is that possible, right? Like, and the most fascinating thing about this is that the world is in 3D, right? So my mind is literally trying to make it 3D. So every single time I started to focus on that and I'd see something, my mind would be like, nope, 3D doesn't make sense. Guess the walls are moving. That's the only explanation I got. It's like the ego's like, nope, I don't understand higher dimensions. This has to be the explanation. The walls are moving. That's the answer. Hallucination. But no, the more I started to practice it, the more I started to see it. And sure enough, like the most remarkable thing happens, okay? And because your mind is trying to make it a 3D world. So you have to be very much aware of that, because every single time you start to focus on it, it throws it back in this 3D world. So you have to know what you're looking at. And what's interesting about each dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, sixth dimension, seventh dimension, is no matter the angle that you're looking at, because everything consists of it. So if you change the angle to the slightest, you're changing the depth of the entire reality, the way that it looks. So I'm sitting here in my living room looking at my kitchen, and my kitchen all of a sudden is really far away, or it's really close, or it got bigger, or it got smaller, or it got like put an angle. I was watching reality shift, like every single time I changed the angles, because my mind was trying to make sense and put it in the 3D world. So it looked like the realities were changing. And again, more hallucinations, right? Well, when I shut up, because eventually, like your ego shuts up, and your ego's like, you know what? I can't make sense of this stuff. I'm out. And that's what happened last night. So what ended up happening was this sphere encapsulates reality, right? Like it's this. So you're looking at this, and I literally have tape measure, and I'm trying to, because I had this theory. I'm like, no, I want to measure the fourth dimension. I want to be able to look at a cube and measure, where's the fourth dimension? Linked with height, where's the fourth dimension? I want to understand it. So I'm literally trying to measure it, but I can't quite hold it still because it's constantly moving, right? So it's like, how the hell do I make sense? So once the ego left and I actually got to view it, I saw this sphere. And for best example, for best explanation, like E8. If you understand E8, it's basically this principle of everything. This theory of everything is what they call it. And it's like every section of reality is covered by this. And then you have all these like quasi crystals making up every section of reality. And that's what I was looking at. So that's why it looked like I was changing depths, because every single time I viewed it from a different perspective, those crystals were literally attached to everything. So literally, reality was changing. But once I actually focused on it, what I was really looking at was the prism of E8. And it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And I couldn't look away from it. And there's this feeling of emotions that are actually tied into it. Like, I can't even describe that part. Like, there's a connection to what I'm seeing. Like this, I'm looking and I'm feeling what I'm looking at. It's beautiful, right? And my mind's trying to make sense of it. I can't. I'm just looking at it and enjoying it, right? Okay. So, am I actually looking at reality? Or am I hallucinating? The answer is yes. Yes to both. Reality is an hallucination. It's the best that I can come up with, right? And the reason why, because we're always going back into the optical illusions things. If other people can see what I saw, which I'm convinced that they are, it took me a few attempts to try it. The first time I did it, I saw it and it was beautiful, but my eyes couldn't focus. I kept trying to put the world into 3D. Because 3D makes sense, right? Like you spend your entire life from childbirth understanding the principles of 3D, right? You need depth, you need space, you need to understand. But this is like the most interesting thing, because when you're looking at this E8 sphere, for lack of a better term, everything's in a sphere, depth is all you have. It's all depth. And it keeps changing depths, right? And the most interesting thing is because you can see every little fractal portion of it. It's infinite, right? Like it just goes on forever. Like if you were to stare at the wall to you, it's filled with wall. The fractals go on forever between that depth. They're always there. But that doesn't make any sense because there's nothing in front of me. I'm not touching it. But when you're looking at the sphere, you can literally see it. And from every angle, it changes. The depths principles changes because you're looking at it from different dimensions. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I think the reason why it was so difficult for me to see, and which I don't know if anyone else saw it or has seen it, or if they can even see it. I believe they can, but the reason why is because we have this mentality that the fourth dimensional world is like a different world, different from what we're in now. And that's not the case, okay? It's what you're looking at now. It's just changing depths. That's the best way that I can describe it. It's changing depths. It's not a different world. So you have like, I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking, he was talking about like, if you had this two-dimensional world and you put a sphere through that, the two-dimensional world wouldn't see the sphere. They would see a dot, and then they would see a circle, and then they would see the circle get smaller and disappear, passing that sphere. And no, that's false. That makes it sound like it's two completely different realities. That's not even close to what it is. Think about it this way. If you're in a two-dimensional world, you can still perceive a sphere, right? Like if you're looking at this on the camera right now, that picture that you're looking at on the screen is not three-dimensional. The picture you're looking at is a two-dimensional picture. You're just looking at a two-dimensional picture of a three-dimensional world. You can still perceive that this is a cube, right? So the two-dimensional world can still perceive 3D objects. So if you pass that sphere through it, it doesn't change realities. If I were to pass this cube through, it would just look like it's moving in front of you, going further away, getting closer. That's what's happening. It's depth. It's like if you're looking at the ocean and you see a boat leave off into the distance, the boat doesn't fall off the earth. It just leaves your line of sight. So that example that they use, like this two-dimensional world is a different world. It's not a different world. Literally the same world. It's like going to see a 2D movie, you put your 3D glasses on and you get depth. It's the same exact picture, you're just getting depth. That's what the fourth dimension, the fifth dimension, the sixth dimension, the seventh dimension looks like. It's the same exact reality, just with greater depth in every direction. It's really beautiful. In fact, I woke up this morning and my eyes were hurting because I was staring at it for like 5 hours, I think, 5 or 6 hours last night. It's incredible. Plus the emotions that are entwined with it. And the implications too, because basically when you're looking at this, there is no depth by the principle that there is nothing but depth, right? Like my physical mind sees something in every aspect of depth. Like I see the prism, so I'm literally looking at every aspect of depth. But that's not possible because I know that there's space between me and the wall. So what does that mean? Am I hallucinating it? Or is space not real? And if space isn't real, where's my body? Where is where? And again, the most interesting thing happened at this point because now my mind became this floating consciousness tied to nothing. And I started to panic. I really started to panic. And it was weird because I was no longer observing reality. I was now observing me. And this was weird because I felt like they were my thoughts, but they weren't. Like I was being pulled out of of my consciousness. Like I'm clearly plugged into something else, some other consciousness. And I'm observing me now. And I quickly tried to pull out of it and I started to panic and I could not see the world in 3D. It was still that. And it was the prism world. And I was like, no, no, no. And I was like begging, please, 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 please bring back the 3D world. I was panicking. And the thing about consciousness is like, apparently I'm creating my own reality. So like everything else started having, everything I was looking at was getting darker and grim and because of my panic. And the music that was playing, because I was listening to music at the same time, the music was getting dark and discomforting, like a nightmare. And honest to God, luckily I've had a lot of experience. And again, this is why I don't recommend cavalier drug use. Okay? This is strictly for educational purposes. I have had a lot of experience with anti-anxiety methods, breathing techniques, meditation. So I have a lot of experience. So when I started to panic, I was able to calm my breathing and start relaxing. And the most interesting thing happened when I brought it back. It became beautiful again. And then I was able to see the world in 3D. I could talk for hours about this because it's absolutely incredible. Did I really see it? Did I hallucinate it? Well, all of reality is hallucination. Look at optical illusions. So what happens if other people try this, or I talk to other people and they saw the same thing? Because right now, you're agreeing because you see my room behind me. We're agreeing on that hallucination. Our minds are just perceiving that. Our eyes are telling our brain that that's there. Everything's an hallucination. So what I saw, was that an hallucination? How did I see that? No, because I know what I saw, and I saw a bunch of depth and shapes and prisms and reality, and I felt it. So what happens if other people try it and they see the same exact thing, and this becomes a reality that we can agree on? Does that mean it's an hallucination, or does that mean it's reality? The implications of this are phenomenal. And it all starts because my eyes are trying to focus on something. So I believe that there are mind-altering drugs like, alcohol, marijuana, narcotics, opioids, everything. There's mind-altering drugs. But you can tell those because those affect your motor skills. Your speech slurs, your entire body slows down. It's altering your brain. But not psychedelics. Body doesn't slow down. You're quite coherent. Your eyes are trying to see something. Not kidding. Let your eyes show you what they're trying to see. And it's that stupid ego, man. The ego, because it's not stupid, but it's not stupid. The ego it makes sense. Like being in 3D makes sense. Because when I was looking at the E8 thing, the sphere, there was a lot of stuff happening. A lot of stuff. Beautiful as hell. But no way in hell we could walk around like that. No way. You need this. This is nice and simple. Side to side, front to back, up and down. Easy peasy. It just makes sense. It's pragmatic. Gosh. Just think about the possibilities. Like, if this is quantifiable, like if other people can experience this too and it's quantifiable and you can actually visually see this, that there is no space. Or maybe I'm just crazy. But I will tell you one thing. And here's the bottom line is that it does make me appreciate this 3D world a hell of a lot more now. Like ever since I started taking psychedelics, it's like, yeah, I go off into this other place, but I come back and this world is actually important. It's kind of crazy how it works, but it gives me a lot more appreciation. Leave me comments. Hit the like button. I want to know if other people have experienced this or tried it. I want to know. I think it's worth reaching out. Maybe I'll reach out to scientists. There's a couple guys that work with quantum mechanics in E8, and they'd probably be interested in trying this. worth a shot, man. I don't recommend doing it. Like I said, I've been meditating for a long time. And I've been on a spiritual journey for a long time, and I'm very familiar with consciousness and even fundamental basics of quantum mechanics. You're gonna definitely need that because you're literally looking at all realities change. That was one thing that too, because when the ego was trying to make sense of it, it literally looked like the realities were changing constantly because I was just looking at it. I forgot to mention how to describe it. It's so weird. The prisms, it's kind of like wearing goggles. Like you have these goggles, so wherever you look, reality changes because you're seeing it through the prisms. It's the best way that I could describe it. And all the depth changes because that's all dimensions are. It's more depth. Just different versions of depth. It's so cool to look at. So cool to look at. Yeah, so thanks for watching.